Kate Hudson is leading the cast of the new Netflix sports comedy Running Point. Can she and the rest of the cast score the winning run before the clock runs out? Go Sports Ball! When a scandal forces her brother to resign, Isla Gordon is appointed president of the Los Angeles Waves, one of the most storied professional basketball franchises and her family business. Ambitious and often overlooked, Isla must prove to her skeptical brothers, the board, and the larger sports community that she was the right choice for the job. So you don't have to be into basketball or even sports for this show. While that is the backdrop for all that happens, this is a character-driven comedy that exploits the dynamics and dysfunction of a family-run business. Now, I wasn't fully sold on the show, or even the characters at the outset. It took about 3 episodes before I began to become fully endeared to them, at least the ones we were meant to be cheering for. Now, in addition to Hudson, this stars Brenda Song, Justin Theroux, Scott MacArthur, Drew Tarver, Max Greenfield, Chet Hanks, Jay Ellis, Toby Sandeman, and Fabricio Guido. That's a bunch of people. Chances are you haven't heard of all of them, but they are each central to the storytelling. Now, we're thrown into the story very quickly, giving us a narrated voiceover that introduces us to most of the cast while also showing us scenes with each character. This is surprisingly effective and is also executed quickly, so we get a brief overview of the characters and then we'll spend the rest of the series getting to know them more intimately. Now, Hudson plays Isla, and you'd think she is kind of the fish out of water in this scenario, but she's intuitive, spunky, and although flawed like her brothers, is able to learn and then pivot to make a lot of her choices successful. But some of the fun comes from all of the unseen obstacles that get tossed into her path. Sometimes through her own doing, but mainly through the antics of her siblings and a few players on the team. Now, I was impressed that the show doesn't look like a TV show. Instead, it has a lot of the filming qualities of a movie. So simply through that, it just feels elevated and more polished. That can't distract, though, if the writing is cringy or terrible. And while some situations and setups are predictable, even blatantly obvious, I surprisingly didn't feel as though the scripting was being dumbed down or overly simplified. The dialogue is quick, and thanks to the editing, each scene is punchy and tight, maintaining a driving momentum from start to finish. Now, each of the characters are quirky, which certainly helps to make them captivating, but I also like that they feed off of each other very well, utilizing some great timing to maximize the laughs and then drive home the snark. We also get to watch characters grow, which is very necessary to binge this. It's 10 episodes at 30 minutes apiece, so to have static people all the way through would become intolerable. Some of the personalities, they actually kind of shocked me. One of Isla's brothers, Ness, is a former player and also comes across a bit like a dumb jock, but there's an incredible warmth and charm to him that the other siblings kind of lack, making him both funny and appealing. And just when you think you've kind of figured him out, he produces another quirky and awesome facet. Now, Hudson is a lot of fun in this. She's channeling some of the personality traits of characters from her films, giving Isla ferocity and a hard edge, but one that's masking a little bit of doubt and fear. I like that the character's also complex. She's not always likable, and at times I really hated her for how she treated people. But more often than not, there were redeeming moments where she learned a lesson or came to her senses and did a 180 from a terrible decision that she was making. And through her character, the show also addresses misogyny without ever being preachy or over the top. It's handled in relatable and matter-of-fact ways that don't come across as being forced into the writing for some agenda, but instead they're just naturally occurring simply based on who the character is and what she's called on to do. Now, my favorite character in the show is this kid named Jackie. He works for the basketball team and is mousy, just lacking a bunch of confidence too. What drew me to him is his pureness. He's got this genuine heart and serves as a great opposite for the majority of the other characters. He gets to provide some subtle humor that works well, and then because he's more of the quiet type, his comedy pierces the other noise because it's delivered so differently. I think probably the one character who is the most one-dimensional is Justin Theroux's character of Isla's eldest brother, Cam. And this isn't because of how Theroux portrays him, but instead, it's how the role is written. And he's put into a position that should require a mountain of change, but he's resistant. And in that capacity, he's really entertaining to watch. But he's also somebody that you want to slap around. And Theroux gives just the right amount of contemptible attitude to Cam, creating humor through the satire of real-life mentalities and the personalities that he's mimicking. Now, while a ton of the comedy lands, there are times when it either gets repetitive or the setups are lame. This doesn't happen often, but because most of the interactions do hit their target, when a joke fails, it's obvious. There are even sight gags that are repeated several times throughout the series, and while I kept waiting for a different punchline to the visual, I think it became funnier because the show never augmented the situation. Now, if you're sensitive to profanity, you can want to steer clear of this show. Most of the characters love their cursing, but one in particular has the trademark of a foul mouth, and because of one of her previous roles, it's even funnier to watch. At the very beginning of the show, we're introduced to Brenda Song's character, Allie, and she's got the mouth of several sailors. Given the fact that she had a long stint on a Disney show, seeing her in a role where she can say and do anything, I thought was wildly entertaining. And I know she's not some wilting flower who's never had a spicy role. I mean, heck, I thought she was really good in The Last Showgirl. But when she's well known for being in The Sweet Life, it's great to see her move away from a role like that. Now, despite this being centered around a basketball team, there's surprisingly little basketball shown. But when it is on display, we're right in the middle of the action and can experience the intensity and the energy right along with the players. And as the show gets towards the final episodes, there is real tension that's built up. I mean, it's kind of like in Ted Lasso, where we don't always watch a match, but when we do, it's an exciting and thrilling moment, making us feel like one of the fans. And I appreciate how the series can capture those emotions, even for somebody who doesn't care about the sport. I think it's sort of a testament to how the show develops the characters and the relationships. They become people that we're invested in, not just from a sports standpoint, but on an emotional level, concerned more for their well-being and interactions than whether or not they have physical ability. I think the show has legs and really could continue solidly for another season. Several different scenarios are still ongoing, along with new conflicts that are beginning to flourish. And there's a certain level of finality to what we see, but because everything hasn't been wrapped up, to end here, I don't think would be as satisfying. And thanks to being hooked on most of the characters, I would love to spend another season watching them work through more dysfunction and family issues while also navigating the trajectory of the team. So overall, while I wasn't hugely excited to check this out, Running Point delivered a great surprise of laughs and heart, with a healthy dose of sarcastic profanity. Kate Hudson and the rest of the cast deliver charismatic performances, with nuanced characters who are adept at both comedy and drama. You don't have to be a sports fan to get into this show thanks to witty writing and tight scripting. The pace moves us efficiently through the story with energetic ease. Not all of the jokes land, and some repetition is noticeable, but on the whole, Running Point hits the jumper when it needs to. There's sex, nudity, an absolute ton of profanity, and barely any violence. I give Running Point 4 out of 5 couches. So are there any sports series that you love to watch? Let me know about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.